We're good? Okay. Super. So, 1 Corinthians. So Paul reminds us now there are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are a varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are a varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge according to the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by the one Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discernment of spirits, to another various kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. And that the passage goes on. So I think about those gifts, about sort of this variety of what God is up to, they're for the common good, and they all come from the Spirit. So we see God doing this Spirit thing with God's people in great variety. And in that variety, we get sort of the diversity of God's love and the communal reality of the church. And in that diversity, then, there's a mutuality and a unity. And so as we move to start thinking about and building from this morning about ways that God may be doing a new thing, I want us to try to appreciate the diversity, and in that be reminded that God brings diverse people together through the Spirit, and that this is something that we don't have to be worried about, but we should be we can be discerning in that variety. So aware of our giftedness, I think the real questions of this age are ones like, this is a question I propose to my students. It gets at the challenges of stewardship in a digital age. So I said I teach a course called Money and Mission of the Church at Lutheran Seminary. And this is one of the prompts I give to my students for an essay. I just wanted to put it out there as a way to frame today's conversation. So as a congregational leader, this is their prompt. As a congregational leader, a member of the congregation approaches you and says, I have 3 monthly automatic debits from my checking account. One goes to the YMCA so I can work out. One supports Minnesota Public Radio, which I listen to much more often than I attend church. And the other automatic electronic deposit goes to the congregation. Since God can act in all places, it's all basically the same, right? And so the students have to struggle with what's their theology of stewardship as they practically engage this sort of challenge or opportunity for electronic debits. And it begs the question, is there a difference between giving to the church, or sometimes we say giving to God, and God's mission beyond the church? And it opens the question of electronic giving and the automatic nature of it. Is the nature of giving change when we're not physically putting an envelope in the plate? So today this afternoon we're going to consider electronic giving and the shifting nature of giving in our culture today. This slide's partly based from the Lake Institute on Faith and Giving. It actually, my group's discussion this morning anticipated this really well, so thanks for throwing a softball here. So these are sort of the older paradigm and the emergent paradigm are 2 ways that we're thinking about sort of giving and the sort of emergent realities around giving. So in the older paradigms, Americans have a tendency not to discuss their giving habits. So we talked about, actually I think Daryl mentioned this morning, so we talked about giving is between you and God, and it's this personal decision. But in an emerging paradigm, we imagine giving as about sharing, or sharing giving habits, not just enabled, but encouraged by community. And I'm trying to remember who else, one of the conversations this morning as well, talking about actually, as a church, we're beginning to talk about how we're underwater on our mortgage, or how we're struggling with money as a family, and doing that in community, and having that sort of help support the conversation in the church. In the older paradigm, we think of giving out of religious obligation. So we give our tithes and offerings to God because that's what God tells us to do. And so I'm obliged to follow out God's orders. As a opposed to more and more developing this paradigm of giving out a personal choice, out of back to that agency this morning, saying, oh, wait a second, I've got all these choices of what to do with my money. There's all these great nonprofits out there. So I'm going to choose and think through, maybe in community, maybe individually, on how to spend my money. Older paradigm says giving is to support the common good versus giving to make a new idea or possibility come into being. It's more specific, it's more aspirational. And the older paradigm, this came up in my group this morning a lot, sort of, institutions are autonomous, and sort of there's this sort of appreciation of institutions versus donors are collaborative partners. So the participation we talked about, donors are part of how we do our work together. And so you can think about your congregations. Do you, as you think about giving in your church, do you talk about it as you give to the church because this is what we all do, this is what we do, this is our big unified budget, or we give to the church as a way of what we are working individually and together in little groups, and how do we connect as participants and collaborative partners. And so, and it's when it's more collaborative, then the gifts necessarily sort of reflect the donor, and there's more of a reciprocal relationship going on. One more slide of this. So older paradigm says institutions are to be trusted versus institutional trust must be earned. So again, if you look at your average nonprofit annual report versus your average congregational annual report, the nonprofit is likely much more savvy trying to earn your trust, trying to share stories about what the nonprofit is doing, trying to connect with you and help you know that your gift to the nonprofit was well spent, as opposed to your average congregation is much more so this is what we did, and there's this sort of institutional assumption that because we're the church we're doing well, rather than sort of describing it and trying to earn that along the way. A contribution or donation versus giving is creating change. When we talk about crowdfunding, this is a really sort of a good way to explain the difference. So rather than sort of giving to a budget, giving to sort of a new idea or something, bringing about something sort of tangibly different. If you want to talk a little bit of theology or theology of duty versus theology of grace, budgets are need-driven versus budgets are mission or values-driven. And a financial focus, insular, sort of about if it's institutional, it's about supporting the institution versus outward or more global focus. So these are sort of two ways that we might think about some different paradigms for giving today. And here's my group almost exactly said this. The challenge and or the beauty of congregational life today is both of these paradigms are true in your congregation. And so you have people who are at home and comfortable and sort of always formed by an older paradigm, and you have folks who are in all their life outside of the congregation is this emerging stuff. And so it's quite the countercultural, the sort of cultural disconnect to come to church where a lot of the older paradigm is going on. And I think our congregations then sort of we wrestle with how do we hold both things true at one time, which is a beautiful thing I learned from my Lutheran colleagues, is that there's this gift of paradox and the both and. And I think when we talk about giving and paradigms, that's what's going on here. So there's this brave new world of electronic giving. What's out there? What is happening? So here's here we go. So this is the picture. There is the pod. It's a startup company. They've got podgiving.com, and rather than offering plates, this company suggests that folks just pass around this pod. And I don't know if you can see it. There's it's an electronic little gizmo, about a little bit bigger than a credit card, and there's a slot for $25, $50, $100, and $10. And so rather than passing an offering plate, They want you to just swipe your card, and don't worry, you can give more than 100. You just swipe it multiple times, and they just pass it down the pews. That it's still in pilot phase. It hasn't been released fully, but in their studies, the company says the giving increased by up to 50%. These you might expect that the congregation that's willing to embrace one of these studies, it may not be is sort of a more sort of hip, young, megachurch, sort of evangelical congregation. But I think it at least shows like there's these interesting new options out there. Similarly, on the right is an app the app is called Givelify, which I think is a horrible word, but Givelify, and it's an interesting vision. They appeal to churches, but they're also trying to appeal to nonprofits and other sort of cause-oriented gifts. And so Givelify folks are saying, we want our app to be the place where sort of you center all your sort of philanthropic gifts. And so a church can have their page and development in the app, but also the food bank in your town might also be a part of the Givelify app, and they want it to be integrated then into what church does. And if you think about it, I'm not saying all of us are or should be going this direction, but it's a handy way to give regularly, or if there's a particular congregational focus or a special offering, to just be able to pull it up on an app wherever you are or whatever time, maybe responding to an email, and give as part of the sort of the church's place on this app might be a sort of handy way to connect. So before we jump in, so we jumped in head first here. Before you run away screaming, though, let's consider actually like what the numbers are here and what practically is going on. And so I'm going to share some from the a study that actually I don't think it's been released yet. They said it was going to come out this week, but I haven't seen it. So you may be the first ones to see this public information. The Vanco folks were kind enough to share it with me because they knew I was talking to you all about giving in the digital age. They released a sort of initial findings report a few months ago. So this is the Vanco Payment Solutions is a mainly serves faith-based professional services and nonprofits. They're a sort of big financial company, and so I was watching one of their videos. They say one of the things they do is they're focused on electronifying payments. I wasn't aware electronifying is a word, but you get the idea of what they're up to. They've got about more than 30,000 clients, and they process over $3.1 billion annually. Their mission is to provide seamless, secure, simple payment solutions, and Vanco Payment Solutions partners with the Simply Giving program that's endorsed by the Thrivent Federal Credit Union, and so what many Lutheran congregations might recognize as Simply Giving is in partnership with Vanco. So simply, I think I'm getting this right. Simply Giving is sort of the Lutheran arm of, and then we use Vanco Payment Solutions as the actual payment processor. So Vanco is aware of there's all these interesting electronic questions going on, and really positively they responded and said, actually, let's do a study. Let's see what folks are, what's out there, what folks are searching for, and I'll say two things about this. One, so in some ways, since Vanco ran the study, I think we should always remember the company is the one that launched the study. And I've looked for these numbers in many different places, and no one has them. And so Vanco has done us a great service in at least starting the conversation. And so my Presbyterian colleagues at the Presbyterian Foundation and which is the sort of stewardship arm of the Presbyterian Church, they are eager to get numbers like this, and actually really jealous about the data that Vanco has provided. So with that sort of both things suggested, I want to put it out there. So what is Simply Giving? I don't want to just throw out terms out here in case these are completely new. So It's basically a way of um, making electronic payments available to congregations. So this is from the Vanco website. It's just a demo, Grace Church. And so they say they set up these web pages, or you can also fill out a form and turn it into a church office that enable you to give online and or to give regularly online. And so they're developing other services, but it's basically, so say, if your average member wants to give, I'm just going to, well, what is the average giving a Lutheran church? It's $232? 700, okay. Okay, thank you, Keith. So average Lutheran household gives $700 a year, so you want to split that into 12 and give monthly donations. You can set up through Vanco. Ideally, you want to do a little more, but we've got, so there's that. And Vanco is also just experimenting with apps for iPads. And so if your congregation has, say, a fundraiser, or just a Wednesday night lunch or a Wednesday night dinner, and rather than taking cash in a basket, you can have an iPad app that collects the money there. And this is just a slide for fun. I won't get political, but Ted Cruz's giving history sort of hit the headlines last week, and he's a member of First Houston Baptist Church. So I was just on their website looking around, and they've got this amazing generosity calculator. So this is on First Baptist Houston's church website, and they're like, if you're curious about how much to give, they have these 3 different categories. Intentional giving is 3 to 5 to 8% of your income, they say, and then break it up, what that looks like in annual giving and weekly. Tithing, it's a little so you put in your salary, and then extravagant giving, which is this. It's a great word, and they give you sort of percentages. So you can just go to their website and put in your annual income, and the website sort of invites you to do it for you. So I just think that's why does that seem odd to me? This is helping folks think through their giving, and yet I don't see that on very many church websites at all. And just sort of speaking to financial giving very explicitly is a wonderful concept. All right, so what are some benefits of e-giving programs? Actually, I'll throw this out. It's after lunch. What are some benefits of e-giving programs that you might just think through as possibilities? Yeah. Yeah. So it's automatic. So it takes some of the anxiety about, wait, did I do that or not? It just makes it sort of very simple. There's another one. Consistency, regularity. It just happens. It's automatic. Yeah. Yeah. So just the sort of reality of how rare it is to write checks for some of us. So my checkbook register is on 4 addresses ago. So I lived in Grand Forks, North Dakota in 2007, and I haven't gotten a new register. I've moved 4 times since then because I so rarely write checks. So absolutely, I never go anywhere with it. So yeah. Sure, yeah, cash. What is cash? People have that. So, so there's just practically, if you put in cash or in an envelope, it's just much simpler. Yeah.
It's easier for the church, and then you don't have to count the checks, figure out who gave what. It's automatically there. It's electronic, and you have all the information.
Sure, yeah. So there's the automatic nature both for the giver and the receiver. So the congregation automatically, and Vanco's and Simply Giving supports this. So you get the report rather than having to do it by hand. There's 2 more in the back. Let's go back then forward. Yeah. Yeah, great. So for Minnesotans, for snowbirds, so they come down south for the winter, they don't have to worry about sending in checks. And then it's just sort of that regularity of busy lives. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and then. Sure. There's You mean, I'll reframe it. You can be glad that even when you're celebrating the beauty of God's creation at the beach, your gift goes to the congregation. Yeah, one more. Yeah. Ah, fantastic. Yeah, that's great. So the first fruits, that's a, absolutely, I hadn't thought of that before. But the first fruitness of the gift can be enabled by this electronic giving. Uh, yeah, yeah, one last one. Great. Hmm. Yeah, thanks. Um, absolutely. So there's just the consistency. So think about it. So if just to throw a number out, if 50% of your congregation gives automatically, you know you can depend on whether or not they're traveling or regularity of gifts coming in. So I know this is a university community. I don't know. Growing up in Tallahassee, at least everything seemed to shut down in the summer. So having that regularity built into the program. And then I'm going to switch it. What are some of the challenges associated with e-giving? What are some of the drawbacks that just come to mind? Yeah. Great. Hmm. Hmm. Sure. Yeah. Sure. Sure. That. Yeah. So sort of so even it eases in some ways reporting, but also makes it a little bit more complicated because like below that is the um, fees associated with some of the programs, and so sort of how do we deal with that? And some churches then, if $100 gift is take if you lose 3% because of fees, then well it's only a $97 gift, and so that it's not. Yep, yep, great, but it's not $100. Great. Yep, I see. Yep. Yep. So it's how, yeah, and great. This and Vanco anticipated this question, or sort of this possibility in one of their questions. So we'll come back to that. Yeah.
The safety of it, we've had
Okay.
congregants who are worried about cyber
Yeah.
identities
Great.
and things like that.
Great. So safety, security. Yeah. Yeah. It feels less like real money. Yeah. That's Nathan Dungan says he's a share safe spend guy. I think it's probably sharesafespend.org. He talks about, and I haven't seen his numbers, but we're more likely to spend more electronically. So um, he argues, as does Dave Ramsey, for as much sort of cash spending as possible because there's this sort of tangible nature to it. So that for some that's definitely a drawback. Yeah. 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 So that what do we do with the offering? If it's all automatic, there's that sort of that tangible, but also the ritual and the communal aspect of collecting the offering. Great. Let's do one more. Yeah. Oh, let's do two more. All right. Yeah. Hmm. Great. Yeah, that's a good, and I didn't put this up, but talking about the emerging and the older paradigm, another one of those shifts is in income streams, and the older paradigm has one income stream, and the emerging paradigm has multiple income streams, and so absolutely that if giving, it's hard for giving to be regular when there's that sort of changing the income. Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Sure, sure. Yeah. So great. So just questions about debt and yeah. Yeah, so that's the other side. It's like, if we're going to if we allow giving through credit card, and let me just say, simply giving, you can do either drawing from a bank account, and so there's just like a sort of electronic check, or there's credit card options or debit card options. Yeah, so just question about well, gosh, do we want to support the credit card industry through our congregation, or do we want to support our members who use credit cards in their life? So that type of thing. All right, so you've got a lot of good questions here, and then we're going to move into some of the findings from the Vanco study. So they surveyed over 1,000 U.S. churchgoers last summer. They're saying this is one of the largest, most comprehensive studies of its kind. The survey focused on attitudes, preferences, and behaviors of churchgoers toward giving. And this is important. Qualifying participants reported that they had attended church at least once in the past 12 months. So this isn't general population. This is folks who attend church with at least once a year. And we'll look into it. It ends up much further than that. Not only this is different sample size completely. They've attended the last 12 months and they've given to the church in the last 12 months, only 80% of members actually give to congregations. So that's actually like a much narrower angle. Okay. So overall preference, sort of one of the big findings, churchgoers have a significant preference toward electronic giving options. We'll break that down a little. Hopefully you can not freak out too much on this. All right, so all age groups prefer electronic giving. You see how it's going on. So 77% of ages 44 and below, and 47% of ages 45 and above. If you do the numbers of the whole study, 60% overall preferred electronic giving. Among the options, this is probably the best way to say that. Of the options that Vanco included, what are they talking about when they're talking about electronic giving? Kiosks, which was mentioned this morning, online giving via a computer or tablet, recurring bank draft, recurring credit card, smartphone, or text giving. So this is actually from Dunham & Company. There's one of the other few folks who have done a study like this. They say that even for donors who are 40 to 59 years old are now the most likely to give online. That's a funny way to put it. They're saying, even for I'll put it this way, even for those who are older than 40, they would prefer to give online, if you're talking sort of numbers-wise. So in 2010, only 47% said they gave a donation online, and in 2015, in that age group, 67% said they have given a donation online. So we're moving more towards online giving. It's also Dunham & Company. Percentage of donors that gave in response to an email is up more than 300% since 2010. So 2010 is only 6%. Now it's 20% of donors said they gave in response to an email. If we think about how are we asking folks to give, if we are actually asking them to give to the church, are we writing a snail mail letter, or are we sending an email with an easy link? More and more folks are responding to those. And if you just think about why is the U.S. Postal Service having horrible budget troubles? Because we don't use mail anymore. And it's much easier, again, back to the check thing, for me to, even if I get a snail mail letter that asks for a gift, actually we did this, my wife and I, for our year-end giving. We got a few of those over on snail mail, and I immediately went to the website and paid via their website. At an envelope and stamp, that's really hard to track down for me. But going online, you can do it in a snap. So just overall, we're moving more towards electronic means. The study also found what they called a giving gap, and there's a sizable gap in the way churchgoers want to give and the options their churches offer. So 25% of churches in the survey reported that 25% of churchgoers reported that their churches offered electronic giving options. So 25% offer the option, but 60% would prefer to use e-giving potential. And I'll skip this slide because it's hard to read. But the point is basically the ways of giving, the ways people are actually giving skew towards cash and checks by mail, but if offered the electronic option, more people would prefer to give by electronic means. Churchgivers who are most engaged with their churches also have stronger preferences towards electronic giving. This sort of blew my mind, but it makes complete sense. So maybe it just tells you something about my mind. But when you think about all those reasons we were listing, Often when church councils talk through this, they're trying to justify it as a way to get those who don't come very often to give. All right, that might be helpful, and I'm not saying that's not true, but actually it's your most active folks who are most likely to give, and those who are most likely to give and most part of the congregation want to give in the easiest way, which is electronically. So it's like, wait a second. For me, it completely shifted this. Rather than trying to bring in those on the margins through this interesting new tool, trying to say, actually, the people at the heart of our congregation, those who are already generous, are the ones who are asking for this, can give electronically every other way, in every other setting. Why can't the congregation help provide that to the folks? Which it just makes complete sense, but also, as I said, what's a surprise. So, and interestingly, they said, what are your most important reasons for giving to the church generally? This is just sort of fun stewardship stats. I enjoy helping my church. It's the right thing to do. The Bible teaches us to help others. My church is doing important work. They sort of asked us two ways, spiritually in the community, and least important is saving money on taxes. That's one of the shifts. Tax write-offs used to be more important to folks. And top 5 negative perceptions about giving. You might not be able to read this, but I like the feeling of giving when the plate is passed. So somebody anticipated that. 34% say e-giving is not part of my church culture. So this culture shift question. E-giving is breaking from the tradition of passing the plate. Skepticism about security and skepticism about just being not comfortable with electronic giving. And then so back anticipating the fee question. And again, like this is one I'm slightly skeptical about because of who made the survey. But if you take the right-hand side, you add it up, that's 6 out of 10 people said they may make a larger contribution if they're told about that the fee is part of it, or they will definitely would make a larger contribution. And so if you tell them it's a 3% fee, they'd give $103 rather than $3 a month, that type of thing. That's what they say. Maybe. I think this points to the importance of communicating and being clear about what's going on. This is a website. I'm going to find my place again. From Impact Church in Atlanta. Just sort of emphasizing this, what a newer congregation, they do some good work. If you just go to their website under giving, I think, just here it is. There's 5 ways to give. You can give in person. You can give online. You've got these giving kiosks. You could offer gifts, or you can mail in your gifts. And right, remember I said both emerging and older paradigm are happening. This is Impact Church says absolutely. Here's 5 ways to give. We're embracing all of this. We want to make it easy to share your generosity with the congregation. So, in response to that question of wait a second, I actually physically want to put something in the offering plate. One way that many congregations have responded is actually putting physical things in the pews so electronic givers can give to congregations. So I was actually at Valley Community Presbyterian Church last week, and I took a picture of this from there. I was sitting in the pew. It's an offering card for electronic giving. It's got some horrible clip art, and it says, "Place this card in the offering plate to represent your automatic gift to Valley this week." And then this is sort of nice. If you're curious about it, oh, wait a second, how do I establish automatic payments? Email Mary. It gets their information there. I couldn't find any great pictures, but I was looking for wooden coins. Some people say they make up little wooden coins with your church. And I was just Googling for wooden coins, and one that said made in Clemson showed up. So I figured I'd keep that in. But if you think about so just having these sort of wooden coins be a currency in a congregation to show giving. You might also give folks, once they sign up electronically, give them a wooden coin that they can keep at home and sort of, have the little church logo on it and just, again, sort of symbolically suggest the giving electronically.
So then you have to kind of train your ushers not to give the eagle eye when
Yeah.
you put that card in the offering plate. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. So absolutely, and it's like, oh yeah, sure, you give online. Yeah, and it's about it's about sort of changing the culture. And so one of the big takeaways, I think I'm going to say this later, but I'll say it now. for any of this, it's about communication. So it's about, and this came out in Key study. It's not just about offering electronic giving, sharing it for 2 weeks in the newsletter, never talking about it again. It's about consistently reminding folks of this option. It's about changing the culture. And so when you call for the offering, and you talk about electronic giving as an option, and thank people for giving both physically and as part of and electronically, just help change the culture and sort of embrace what God can do electronically. So here's some big picture takeaway, and this may get a little, okay. So if I'm going to make a claim stewardship. So I'm going to say digital technology helps support my financial stewardship. As I said again, digital technology helps support my financial stewardship. Through electronic giving, absolutely. Through mint.com, which is a website I use to organize my entire budget. Through credit cards that do give me great Delta points. Through the ways I annually set up gifts, automatic payments, rent, etc. So I'm stewarding what God has given me with electronic means all the time. And so actually, digital technology is part and parcel of how I deal with financial stuff. And so actually, this is the one exception. Like, I only ever have cash when I travel, because I always just get a little more, just a little anxious about traveling around the U.S. without cash. So like, I've got $20 in my wallet now. I haven't had cash for weeks, but I went on a trip, and I'll have that same $20 in like 3 months because I won't spend it anywhere because it's cash. So like, that's really strange. And it'll give me then sort of, generally, I'm imagining us, and this is not just me, this is sort of the data saying we're moving away from a cash economy. More technology folks are wondering if we'll one day just stop using cash completely. And before that freaks us out too much, remember that historically we moved from giving animals to offering envelopes to collecting cash, like for when folks got paid weekly in cash, to supporting churches by taxes, or state taxes supporting churches. And this is just one more time the church has an opportunity to shift. And though the dollar says, "In God we trust," we actually trust not in the dollar but in God, right? And so there's always this openness we might have to what new things might be happening. And so here's a crazy proposal. And this is my dad first made this argument, so I'm going to he's a pastor in Florida. I'm going to credit him, but I'm also going to build on it. So what if we got money out of worship entirely? And a few churches have done this. Tend to be new church plants. But so if the whole of worship is an offering, if hymns, psalms, and spiritual psalms are an offering, and so are the prayers, the sermon, all of it is in response to God's grace. Our monetary offerings are a form, but no theological reason to elevate them above any other forms of worship. So money is part of our offering, but it's part of our offering. It's not our only type of offering. When we bring the monetary offering to the communion table, as is the tradition in many congregations, we don't want to suggest any tit for tat. We don't want to say we receive communion because we just gave gifts to God, right? We don't have that theology. The offering is not, and in fact, the offering is not given to God, but to fuel God's mission. So God is not hanging out. So if we lift the offering up in front of the table, God's not hanging out at the table in some sort of magical way. That we believe God is working in the elements, yes, but beyond them. And the Reformers, this is sort of historically where I ground this. The Reformers, including Luther's own pastor, Johannes, I'm not Lutheran, but Johannes Bugenhagen, emphasized the necessity of a common chest for the welfare of the community. So alms were given to the chest or an alms box to be given to the needy. And this, Luther said, is in response to communion. So we're giving in response to the communion, which always, whenever we eat the bread and drink the wine together, we are made aware of our care for our neighbor. And so I've been told by those who have visited France and Germany, you'll still see alms boxes in churches. So they're in the narthex of congregations. And so rather than collecting the offering as part of the service, after the service, folks were invited to give alms. And the alms went to the poor. They weren't to support the church, they were to support the poor. So how might giving change, both in practice and in our understanding of it, if we eliminated the physical offering plate entirely? Finally, what might this do to our conception of the so-called annual campaign? Electronic giving should enable us towards a more year-round approach to stewardship and year-round giving. So that's sort of my crazy idea that I realize is not going to be implemented anytime soon. But I hope it might help us think about, wait a second, what is the offering doing in the first place? And remind us historically, actually, there's different ways to do this. And in some way, the offering plate is a tool, not a theology. All right, a few sort of shifting to a few stewardship of digital technology, and I'll end with crowdfunding. This is David Bjorklund. I got his permission to share this. He's a student in my Money Mission course. So one of for the final project in that course, students had the opportunity to try to raise funds for something, or they could do a 3-year annual stewardship plan for a congregation. A few students wanted to try the fundraising. And so David participated in Movember. Have you all heard of this, Movember? So you for men, grow out a mustache in November to raise awareness for men's health, particularly causes related to prostate cancer. And David had set the goal of raising $1,000 to support the Movember Foundation. So David, this is has tried it before. He wasn't very successful, and so $1,000 for him, he's in seminary, was a stretch. And he launched it at the beginning of November. He gave a personal donation of $100, and he uploaded a video introducing the campaign. By November 20th, David wasn't halfway through yet, and he was worried. So then on the 19th, he posted this message on Facebook, along with the link to his Movember page. He said, "While trimming up last night, I found a gray hair in my mustache. It was a small reminder of why I'm doing this Movember thing. I may be young and healthy now, but I won't be forever. Hopefully," I've got the rest of the quote, "hopefully I won't have to face the specter of prostate cancer, and hopefully you won't either. But if that day comes, I feel good knowing that I help support research into better diagnosis, treatment, and care." And then he went on, "I want you to join me and thousands of others in supporting the Movember Foundation." At the end of that day, when he made that message, he received $370. And in his reflection paper, and he ended up making the goal of the campaign. He got over $1,000. In his reflection paper, he reflected on the project, and he said, this post showed vulnerability, it showed a narrative that drew people in, and it gained momentum and invited people to share in the excitement. So back to that, people give to an idea, they want to create change. This post made David enunciate what giving meant in a different way. And also, because he shared it on Facebook, was a way of stewarding that electronic platform. I'm going to skip this. All right, so I'm going to finish up with a quick primer on crowdfunding and how this might be used for congregations. So how many of you have heard of Kickstarter or Indiegogo or platforms like that? About half or so. How many of you have supported a campaign? Oh, great, 25% or so, great. So crowdfunding began approximately 2009. Crowdfunding now raises $5 billion a year, that's with a B, and it's only growing. So the emphasis of sort of the reality of crowdfunding stuck out for me first when there was a Fargo-based like new business startup weekend. Sort of you launch these business ideas, and there was an article in the paper about it after the weekend. And the top 3 winners of the new business competition, when asked how would they fund the business, they all said through crowdfunding. So what is it? So here's the academic definition. Crowdfunding refers to the efforts of entrepreneurial and individuals and groups, cultural, social, and for-profit, to fund their ventures by drawing on relatively small contributions from a relatively large number of individuals using the internet without standard financial intermediaries. All right, what in the world does that mean? Well, if you're one person, say, I've got an idea. I want to create this new thing. I want this thing to come into the world. but I don't have the money to do it. People, help me out. Will you give money? And as a response or in gratitude to that, I'm going to give you some sort of perk or some sort of gift. And so if you want to launch a CD, if you want to make a CD, if you give $20, I'll give you the CD. Or if you want to give to a nonprofit, you give $100, I'll give you a tote bag. Now, that type of sort of possibility is there, but it's not necessarily required of the campaign. Yeah.
So there was I love Shark Tank. I don't know how many of y'all watch Shark Tank. So they actually had this group that had come up and made a website.
Yeah.
And it was for people who were going to have a wedding.
Uh-huh.
And it was a crowd-funding website to where people who wanted to give a present to the couple
Mhm.
could get
Yeah.
on this website and give them. They said, all right, we want to go to the Cayman Islands.
Mhm.
Well, these people could buy their massage on Wednesday
Yeah.
afternoon, or they could buy them
Yeah.
dinner on
Yeah.
Tuesday night. And so it was everybody could pitch in and give
Mhm.
them this unbelievable
Mhm.
honeymoon, but it was sort of set up online
Yeah.
with the individuals being able to do that.
That's a great example. And back to that emerging paradigm, it's all about that. It's saying, I want to create this thing, I want to create this experience, I want to bring about this vision rather than giving to the institution. Here's a gift, congratulations, you got married. So Indiegogo and Kickstarter are the two biggest campaigns, but there's two biggest crowdfunding options. There's others like We Raise. We Raise is out of Wheat Ridge Ministries in Chicago. They launched a faith-related crowdfunding site. GoFundMe is particularly for nonprofits, and CrowdRise is another. So the question is, what the heck does this have to do with the church? We can fund weddings, great honeymoon, and the answer is, well, nothing. We can just let this sort of be a part of the culture and not sort of join in, or we can sort of ask, what new thing might God be doing, and what if and wonder what if we experimented with crowdfunding. What if we give it a shot just because maybe God is doing a new thing and maybe we'll learn something in the process. So I'm going to give you now a few quick examples of congregations that have used crowdfunding. So here's Humble Walk Lutheran Church in St. Paul. They had a group of guest artists come in and sort of play for them they got a grant to do it over a year. And at the end of the year, they said, wait a second, we've got all these new songs that were composed for our community. Let's start well, we don't have any money to actually make a CD, but wouldn't folks love a CD out of this? And they said, well, we don't have money to do that. It costs about $8,000. Well, let's see. And they made a video in one take on a cell phone and launched this page, and they got 130 folks back in the project and raised $9,000. You can see the theology going on. This is the pastor, Jody Hogue. I said, was it successful? She said, sure. We not only funded the CD project, but we get to give this art away for free to the big old world. Artists got to write songs. Our studio people got to do what they were created to do. We get to give it all away, and we got to invite others along in the process. Remember that 1 Corinthians passage about varieties of gifts and a community that welcomes those? This is crazy. Rooster Soup Company is proposed. It's about to exist, a restaurant in Philadelphia. Broad Street Ministries is related to a congregation, Presbyterian congregation in Philadelphia, and they said, wait a second, here's what we want to do. We want to launch this restaurant, the proceeds of which will go to support the Broad Street Ministries, which is this hospitality ministry in the congregation, particularly with homeless folks. And they said, we need $150,000 if we're going to launch this new restaurant. And so they talked, and this gets super complicated and amazing. What restaurant? The restaurant would only serve soup. Why soup? Because the restaurateurs who the congregation partnered with have a line of donut restaurants that serve three things: fried chicken, donuts, and coffee. And they're spending money taking away all the leftover chicken parts. And they said, wait a second, we can make chicken stock and launch a new line of soup restaurants, and all the proceeds of that will then go to support the ministry. And so this is a nice graphic explaining how the gifts would move along. They emphasize it's better than a one-time gift because you're helping build a perpetual money machine, nearly free chicken stock in, jobs and donations out. I asked Andy, their director, minister for stewardship, how do they message it? They said, well, we honed in on shared values, so the restaurateurs and the congregation, like radical hospitality, and we focused on connections and a compelling civic vision. One of the restaurateurs was Jewish, the other was atheist, but they partnered with this congregation because of this exciting idea and because of their shared search for justice together. There's several new congregations that have done this. This is the congregation in Pittsburgh that was facing a budget cut, and they were going to cut a position, and that supported their homeless ministry. And the person in the position said, "Wait a second, if I raise the money for this position through crowdfunding, you think I can stay on?" And in a few months, she raised $10,700, which it was a part-time position, which funded that for another year. So I think this calls the church to a new type of vision, to one that helps us ask new questions and sort of seeks to see what God might be doing beyond our walls. Crowdfunding won't keep the lights on in your church. It probably won't fix the organ, but there have been a few projects related to organs. But it might fan new flames for innovative work in your congregation. And also, and here's the beauty of this, it pushes us to think about mission in a new way, to think about what God might be doing beyond the congregation, and to not just fund sort of our institutional budget, but to fund new emerging possibilities. So finally, and related to this crowdfunding piece then, so the older paradigm works in private, we said, but actually crowdfunding is all about sharing on social networks. I supported this campaign. Why don't you do it too? It's about, so if giving is about in-person relationships, emerging paradigms about giving to a faraway stranger, but that stranger is somebody with whom I'm in partner and community, and then moving beyond an organization versus motivated by a compelling mission, cause, something click-worthy, something that sort of grasps the excitement. So to wrap up, today we've considered the signs of the times, to today's digital age. We've strengthened and broadened our understanding of stewardship. We've considered and imagined new ways that we might live into stewardship in a digital age. So whether in digital text or video, Facebook or e-giving, kiosk or cash, one thing is clear: stewardship has gone viral. And thank God, the Spirit moves in mysterious ways, analog and digital, face-to-face and online, in ways we expect and in ways unimagined. So when it comes to our digital age, God just might be doing a new thing. And to paraphrase an old mentor of mine, God's new things always knock our socks off. Thanks. So
we'll go into our breakout groups again, and you can go into the same group that you were in the first time around. Jim, do you have some announcements for us?
We will conclude back here at 20 minutes till 3, and I would ask that you take a few minutes at that time to fill out your evaluation form so we can get input from you. It's very, very helpful to present to planning teams. And I'm so glad that you've taken your day to come and be with us. I know I've grown a lot in my understanding. So one more breakout group. I'm going to crowdfund my raise up to my room.
Oh, you're welcome. It is, yeah.
I live with a woman who cannot. She gets almost hysterical.